Welcome to EnglishPass Podcast, brought to you from our local studio in Calgary. I'm your host, Samantha, and today we're diving into an exciting topic, a brainstorming session. Whether you're a beginner or intermediate learner, in this podcast, we're helping you level up your English listening and reading skills. And before we get started, let me tell you that the sponsor of this episode is TypeFit, keyboard typing practice and learning service. Today, we're exploring something really interesting, a brainstorming session. This is an exciting subject for English learners because it covers a lot of practical vocabulary and real-world situations. So, let's dive right in. A brainstorming session is a group activity where people come together to generate as many new ideas as possible for a specific problem or topic. The main goal is to think creatively without any fear of being wrong. Think of it as a mental storm where thoughts are spinning around and colliding to create something powerful. This technique was first introduced by Alex Osborne, an advertising executive in the late 1930s. He noticed that business meetings were often stiff and boring, and that people were too afraid to share their wildest thoughts because they feared being judged by their bosses. He wanted to create a safe space where the mind could play. This leads us to the concept of ideation, which is simply the process of forming new ideas or concepts. During a brainstorming session, the primary focus is on ideation rather than evaluation. If you start judging ideas too early, you kill the creative spark before it has a chance to grow. To understand how this works, we must look at the 4 basic rules that Osborne created. First, criticism is strictly forbidden. You cannot say that an idea is bad or impossible during the session. Second, freewheeling is welcomed. This means that the wilder the idea, the better it is. It is much easier to take a crazy idea and make it practical later than it is to take a boring idea and make it interesting. Third, quantity is wanted. The more ideas you have, the higher the chance of finding a brilliant one. Finally, people are encouraged to combine and improve upon the ideas of others. This is often called hitchhiking or piggybacking. When you take someone else's thought and add a new twist to it, you are using the collective power of the group. One of the most famous real-world examples of a successful brainstorming session involves the creation of the Post-it note at the company 3 Million. In the early 1970s, a scientist named Spencer Silver accidentally created a very weak adhesive that would stick to surfaces, but could be easily removed. For years, he showed it to his colleagues, but no one knew what to do with it. It seemed like a failure. However, during a casual session where employees were encouraged to think of new uses for existing technology, his colleague Art Fry had a realization. Fry was a singer in a church choir and was constantly frustrated when his bookmarks fell out of his hymn book. He realized that Silver's weak glue could make the perfect bookmark. By combining the failed glue with the need for a temporary marker, one of the most successful office products in history was born. This shows that brainstorming is not just about coming up with something brand new, but also about seeing old things in a new way. Another fascinating example comes from the world of animation. Pixar Animation Studios uses a specific type of brainstorming called the brain trust. When a movie is in development, the directors and writers meet to discuss the story. They use a technique called plussing. Instead of saying no to an idea, a participant must say yes and, followed by a way to improve the suggestion. For example, if someone suggests that a character should be a talking toy, another person might say, Yes, and what if that toy is afraid of being replaced by a newer model? This creates a positive atmosphere where ideas can evolve quickly. This brings us to a key vocabulary word: synergy. Synergy is the interaction of two or more people to produce a combined effect greater than the sum of their separate parts. In a Pixar session, the synergy of the group creates stories that no single person could have written alone. Have you ever wondered how complex products like shopping carts are designed? The design firm IDEO is famous for its brainstorming methods. Many years ago, they were challenged to redesign the standard grocery store shopping cart in just 5 days. They gathered a diverse team of experts, including linguists, biologists, and mechanics. They spent hours in a room filled with toys, foam, and markers. They didn't just talk, they built prototypes. They looked at the problem from every angle. Why do carts roll away in parking lots? Why are they hard to clean? Why are they dangerous for children? By the end of the week, they had a cart with a removable plastic basket and wheels that could turn in any direction. This type of session involves divergent thinking, which is the ability to explore many possible solutions in order to find one that works. Let us look at a fourth example in the world of marketing. Imagine a team trying to come up with a slogan for a new brand of sparkling water. They might start by writing the word water in the middle of a large board. From there, they branch out into words like bubbles, refreshing, clouds, and diamonds. One person might suggest that the water feels like stars in your mouth. Another might say it feels like a celebration. Eventually, someone might combine these to create a slogan about celebrating the everyday. This shows how a session can move from simple words to complex emotional messages. The person leading this meeting is called a facilitator. A facilitator does not necessarily provide the ideas. Instead, their job is to keep the conversation moving and ensure that everyone has a chance to speak. They help the group overcome inhibition, which is the feeling of being shy or self-conscious that prevents people from speaking up. A fifth example can be found in urban planning. When a city wants to build a new public park, they often hold brainstorming sessions with the local community. Residents might suggest things like dog runs, community gardens, or outdoor theaters. A child might suggest a giant slide that looks like a dragon. While a dragon slide might seem impractical at first, it could lead to the idea of a themed playground that attracts tourists and boosts the local economy. This is a great example of how brainstorming can include people who are not experts. Sometimes, the best ideas come from the people who will actually use the product or service. In the world of technology, software developers often use brainstorming to solve bugs or create new features. Imagine a startup that is building an app for food delivery. They notice that people are deleting the app because they find the checkout process too long. In a brainstorming session, the team might use a method called reverse brainstorming. Instead of asking, "How can we make this better?" they ask, "How could we make this even worse?" Someone might say, "We could require users to type their entire life history before ordering." This might seem funny, but it helps the team realize that the current app is already asking for too much information. By identifying what makes the experience bad, they can clearly see what they need to remove to make it good. One common misconception is that brainstorming is just a messy conversation with no structure. In reality, the best sessions have clear boundaries. If the topic is too broad, the ideas will be too vague. If the topic is too narrow, the ideas will be limited. For example, a session about how to save the planet is too big. A session about how to reduce plastic waste in one specific office building is much more effective. Another nuance is the difference between group brainstorming and individual thinking. Some studies suggest that people are actually more creative when they think alone first and then bring those ideas to the group. This is because it prevents a phenomenon called social loafing, where some people sit back and let others do all the work. To avoid this, many facilitators use brainwriting. In this method, everyone writes down 3 ideas on a piece of paper before anyone starts talking. Cultural context also plays a role in how these sessions happen. In some cultures, it is considered rude to disagree with a leader or a person who is older than you. In these environments, brainstorming can be difficult. To fix this, teams might use anonymous idea boxes or digital tools where names are not shown. This allows the ideas to stand on their own merit regardless of who suggested them. This helps create a sense of psychological safety, which is the belief that you will not be punished or humiliated for making a mistake or sharing an unpopular opinion. Once the session is over, the group must move into convergent thinking. This is the opposite of divergent thinking. Now that you have 100 ideas, you must narrow them down to the best 2 or 3. This is where evaluation finally happens. The group might vote on the ideas or categorize them into buckets like easy to do, expensive but high impact, or long-term goals. Without this final step, a brainstorming session is just a fun talk that leads nowhere. The transition from the wild, creative phase to the practical, decision-making phase is where the real work begins. In conclusion, a brainstorming session is a tool that transforms a group of individuals into a single creative engine. Whether it is a giant corporation like 3 million, a creative studio like Pixar, or a small group of friends trying to plan a vacation, the rules remain the same. You must suspend judgment, encourage the wild, focus on quantity, and build on what others have said. By understanding these concepts and using tools like facilitators and brainwriting, anyone can unlock the hidden potential of a group mind. After all, the next world-changing idea might be just one, yes, and away. And that's all for today's episode of EnglishPass Podcast. I hope you found this helpful. Remember to practice what you've learned, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we improve. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and join us next time. Let me remind you that the sponsor of the episode is TypeFit, and I suggest to check the link at the description. I'm Samantha, and I'm excited to be your host for many more fascinating episodes to come. Until then, keep learning and keep growing. Goodbye.